Start off first with cooking the chicken, and what I did with my chicken, I seasoned it overnight. I marinated with what did I marinate this one with? You can marinate it with your favorite salad dressing. That's what I did. And actually this one is frozen solid because I put it in the freezer because I wasn't sure when I would cook it. And then of course after I poured the salad dressing on it to marinate it, I seasoned it with, of course, my everyday seasoning on everything. It makes everything taste so much better. So now I'm going to warm my pan up, because first I'm going to do the chicken and then I'll do the grits, because you cook everything separately and then you put it together. So I'm going to put a little light olive oil in it. I don't really like olive oil, so I do the light cooking olive oil. This one really doesn't taste as thick. Some olive oil is really thick, so I just get the light olive oil. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of that into there and kind of swirl that around. Can you see my oil? Just kind of swirl it around in the pan just to kind of warm it up before I put my frozen chicken in there. And this is chicken breast. That's what I like. You can use any part of the chicken you like. I like the chicken breast because it doesn't have all the fat added to it. So I'm going to, and this is actually 2 pieces. It's just kind of stuck together because, like I said, I froze it because I wasn't sure when I was going to cook it. So now I'm just going to let this cook for a while, and then I'll make the grits separately, and then I'll come back and show you how to incorporate the chicken with the grits. So see, this is cooking really good right about now. Let me show it to you. That thing is hot. Okay. Can you see it? You can see it. Okay. So we're going to let that cook, and I'm actually going to put a top on this and let it kind of steam. And then I'll come back and show you how to cook your grits. To cook our grits, I'm going to cook the grits. These are the grits that I buy. I like the 5-minute grits. I don't like instant. And it only takes about 5 minutes for it to cook, so it's pretty easy. I usually just follow the recipe on the back. Follow the instructions on the back. So I'm going to make 1 cup of the grits. Well, actually you're using 1 cup of liquid. It says water, but I don't like my grits with water because it tastes like that. So I use chicken broth. So I'm just going to shake this up. And I'm going to put a cup of water, a cup of the broth in there instead of the water. Now sometimes I half and half it. You know, you can do half broth and half water, but this time I'm just going to use the whole 1 cup of broth. So I'm going to put this in the pan. I'm going to turn this down a little bit and use 1 cup of the broth. And like I said, make this recipe your own. I never made the chicken and grits before, so we're trying this together. So there's our 1 cup of broth. And then the back of the grits calls for 1/4 cup of grits. But first I actually let this boil. Going to let this boil. Let me see. Stir grits. Yep. Let the broth or the water, whatever you decide to use, let it boil first. So I turned that up high, and I'm going to measure out my 1/4 cup of grits. And like I usually say, every thing needs its own seasoning. So I'm going to actually season the grits too. That's what the broth will do too. It will give your grits some flavor. To me, when you use the water, the grits taste like you cooked them in water. So I'm going to let that boil. And I'm going to put a little bit of the pink salt in the grits. So I'm going to just add that now to my 1/4 cup of grits. See that here? Just put some of that on there, because grits with no salt doesn't taste good to me. So I use the pink salt. You can use whatever salt you want. I try to keep it as healthy as possible. And then of course I'm going to use again my handy dandy everyday seasoning. I'm telling you, this stuff makes such a big difference in your food. I'm telling you, it makes it taste really, really good. I get it from Trader Joe's. I'm not sure if anyone else sells it, but I get it from Trader Joe's. So we're going to wait for this to boil. Broth is boiling, so now I'm going to add the grits and salt to the boiling water. Just kind of stir that in there so that they don't clump up, so that you don't have clumps. And then I'm going to just let this cook. See how good that looks? I like the way the broth makes it look. It gives it like a yellow tint to it, and I like that. I don't like my grits white. See? And I'm going to add a little bit of the Earth Balance soy free butter to it. You can use any butter you like. This is just what I like to keep it healthy. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the butter to give the grits its own flavor. And it's still cooking just a little. It's going to stir that in there. These grits are so good. Using the broth instead of the water makes the grits really, really good. And I'm going to actually put a little bit of my everyday seasoning in it also. Just a little, just to flavor the grits. And then just a little bit of the shredded cheese in it too. This is more like a southern dish. The grits and the chicken. This is like a southern dish, so you have to try it. Some people fry their chicken, but because I'm doing it healthy, I won't fry it. So here are the grits, and I'll come back and show you how to put it together. The pan I took the chicken out of, and this is what came off of the chicken. This is the marinade off of the chicken. So what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to use it to help make our gravy. So I'm going to put the onions and the mushrooms and let them cook together. And I'm actually going to season them a little too, so that they could have flavor. So of course I'm going to use my everyday seasoning to season the onions and the mushrooms. You don't need a whole lot this time because the flavoring from the chicken is at the bottom of the pan. Then I'm going to use a little bit of onion powder, just a little, because I also use this on my chicken. Then I'm going to use a little bit of the garlic powder and let these just cook up. And then I'm just going to just stir this up a little just to help it to cook. We're going to use this gravy to go over our grits and chicken. It's going to be delicious. It's smelling really good already. Oh my goodness. I'm excited about this menu. You make it your own. And then you can put a little bit of olive oil or butter at the bottom. I think I need a little more. But I won't add any more grease to olive oil to this. Just let it cook up. Let the onions cook and the mushrooms cook down. And you can cut these to the size that you like. I cut my mushrooms a little big this time, but you can cut it down to the size that you like. Doesn't that look delicious? It's going to be a gravy. My goodness, that looks delicious. And it's smelling delicious too. And with this, I'm going to add some more broth. This is what's going to make our little gravy. And just a little bit of the flour. I'm using whole wheat flour. I'm going to shake this up again. Maybe let this cook a little more so that the mushrooms will be kind of cooked up. You can use any kind of mushrooms you like. Portobello, shiitake, any kind. These are bellas. Yes, so I'm going to let that cook down. Shake this up again. Put a couple of cups, let me see. Put a couple of cups of stock in here. Broth. That calmed that right down. I'm just going to use the rest of this in here. You can use up to like 3 cups of broth. And I'm going to let this kind of cook together before I add my flour, just to thicken this up some. Let this come to a quick boil just to get it started. Isn't that looking delicious? Let that cook. It's going to boil, and then I'm going to add the flour just to thicken it up some. You can also season this again, and you need to taste it to make sure it's to your liking, like it has the flavor that you want it to have. You can make any recipe your own. Just, you know, continue to taste it and make sure it tastes the way you like your food to taste. Some people like a lot more salt. Some people like less. I like less. So I'm going to let this come to a boil. Going to add just a little bit of the flour. I'm going to see if it's going to thicken up a little on its own after it comes to a boil. Come on, let's boil, let's boil, let's boil, let's boil, let's boil, let's boil. Come on. Slowly but surely it's going to boil. And you want it to boil just so that it will thicken up once you add your flour to it. So let's do that now. I'm going to add it just a little bit at a time. You don't want to do too much because you don't want it to look like oatmeal or something really, really thick. That should do it. So I'm going to see if that's enough. If not, you can always add more to it just to thicken it up some. I'm going to let that boil, and then I'm going to show you how I put all of this together for one delicious meal. Grits with chicken. This is the grits and the chicken put together with the onions, the mushrooms, and the gravy. Doesn't that look delicious? Oh my goodness, I can't wait to taste it. So remember to share your food with your family and friends. Share this video, and thank you so much for joining. I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.